I just wanna get to you. Hello and welcome to this bonus episode of Kylie Retrospectives with me, ElliXia Q Valentine, Malvern's answer to someone. Who are my Malvern's answers to? I've already forgotten who I was going to say. Fuck it, let's just say I'm Malvern's answer to Kylie Minogue. Why not? Who's gonna stop me, eh? This is a bonus episode of Kylie Retrospectives in which we'll be talking about Kylie's multiple greatest hits albums. I've missed you. Have you missed me? Well, try and sound a bit enthusiastic about it. Jesus. Kylie Minogue has a lot of greatest hits albums. 13, to be precise. 13 greatest hits albums. That's right, 1-3 greatest hits compilations that have been released via various record labels over the years. Sometimes that have been promoted by Kylie herself, and then other times they've probably just been to cash in from former labels to be like, look, we once had Kylie Minogue signed to us. A lot of these greatest hits albums don't actually offer anything new, and as such weren't really treated as proper album campaigns, but the ones we're going to cover today are. And this selection of greatest hits albums we have is not exhaustive, as you can imagine. I don't even have copies of the 13 different compilation albums she has, because I haven't got that kind of money. Today's look is inspired by the Abbey Road sessions. The nice sort of classy glamour. I think I'm very glamorous today. This was actually the first lace front wig I ever bought actually. And it gets matted really easily. So let's crack on with this video whilst we can, whilst it's still looking semi-decent. So today's greatest hits that we are covering are greatest hits from 1992, Hits Plus from 2000, Ultimate Kylie from 2004, the Best of Kylie Minogue from 2012, the Abbey Road Sessions also from 2012, and Step Back in Time from 2019. And as it makes sense to do things alphabetically, let's start with the greatest hits, 1992. This album was released on the 24th of August 1992, making it the first Kylie album to be released in my lifetime. It reached number 1 on the UK albums chart, and it was a greatest hits to end her time with the record label PWL. This greatest hits compilation has every Kylie single to date from that point, from 1997 to 1992, covering her time with the record label. Kylie's time with PWL, the Stock Aitken Waterman label that she was with, was very successful. She sold a shed load of records in the UK, was pretty unstoppable, had a huge chain of consecutive top 10 singles. However, Kylie herself was sort of outgrowing Stock Aitken Waterman and the record label, and Greatest Hits was a way to sort of close that chapter while she moved on to a new one. If you watch any interviews with Kylie from this time period, actually, she kind of looks a bit fed up and a bit like, you know, you can tell she's yearning for a change in direction here. Greatest Hits contains every single from I Should Be So Lucky all the way up to the most recent single at the time, Find the Feelings, in chronological order, and it also contains 3 new tracks as well. New track number 1 is What Kind of Fool, in brackets, Heard All That Before. A title that's meant to be a bit ironic. What Kind of Fool sounds very similar to the first 2 albums, and it was kind of ironic because it was like, what kind of fool heard all that before, even though it was a song we'd essentially heard before, if you know what I mean. There's layers to this. What Kind of Fool is actually a really good song though. It's a proper bop. It's a sassy breakup anthem where she's talking to a no good man and she's saying, you know, he's trying to get her back, he's promising her the world and all this, and she's like, do I look stupid? Have I got stupid tattooed on my forehead? No, I have not. Those aren't the actual lyrics, but it's. And What Kind of Fool has a lot of bite. Unfortunately, it's a song that, if I'm not mistaken, I don't actually think Kylie likes it all that much herself. It's never been performed on tour, only ever slightly sampled. And it's omitted from the majority of these greatest hits that I have in front of me as well. Except for Step Back in Time. It was included on Step Back in Time, so you never know, we might see it on tour at some point in the future. The next track on Greatest Hits is Where in the World. This wasn't a single, and I'm not that sad for it. To be honest, it's not that good a song. It's quite meh to me, I think. Not really much else to say about it, unfortunately. Rather obscure track, really, given that it's on a Greatest Hits compilation. Wasn't a single, and therefore it kind of just exists. And then we have the last new track on this album, Celebration, which was also a single as well, in November of 1992. I'm not keen on her version of Celebration either, I have to be honest. I think it's just kind of a bit lackluster and a bit like, you know, it's a celebration. but it sounds very sort of just like, well, yeah. It's not really a song for a celebration, it's more of a song for like, you know, a couple of quiet drinks with your friends rather than a big party. I think Kylie is quite a big fan of Celebration though, because she's performed it quite a few times since. And when she's performed it in the years following this, especially in recent years when she did it at Kylie Christmas, on the Kylie Christmas show, it was much, much, much better. So I'd be well up for a studio version of the new version of Celebration. It does come to life really well in the live setting. I think this version that was recorded is a bit, you know. Next on the list is 2000's Hits Plus. Hits Plus was released on the 16th of October 2000 and it reached number 41 in the UK albums chart. However, it did actually sell more than Impossible Princess did. The compilation of Hits Plus has all of the singles from the Deconstruction era, so that was 1994 to 1998. It features the singles from Kylie Minogue and Impossible Princess, as well as her collaboration with Nick Cave, Where the Wild Roses Grow. Hits Plus doesn't contain any brand new recordings, but it does include some rarities, such as a few B-sides and remixes, as well as some unreleased stuff that had never been heard before. This is of course back in the days before stuff would leak on the internet as well. And Hits Plus actually is definitely an album worth looking into because some of these unreleased tracks are really good as well. When I talk about Kylie's very extensive collection of greatest hits albums, a lot of them are from the record label Deconstruction, which Kylie was very briefly signed to in the 90s and didn't have a huge amount of commercial success with, and therefore they mutually decided to end the contract with each other. And then of course Light Years happened with Spinning Around and Kylie, I think, unexpectedly became really big again. And following that time there has been a lot of greatest hits compilations which just include the Deconstruction songs. And there's a clear element of like, let's cash in on the fact that we once had this worldwide megastar signed to a label. Hits Plus is the first in many of those releases. However, Hits Plus is probably the only one that's actually worth looking into because it contains new material, or new for the time, and actually has stuff that you can't get anywhere else. I mean, just to hammer home really how much cashing in there was from this era, there are 3 compilation albums called Confide in Me. 3 of them. That's 3. 3. I think they all basically have the same track listing, more or less, as well. So it's just like, what's the point? I don't understand it. But Hits Plus is a compilation that has a lot of point. So we like Hits Plus in this house. Then up next we have Ultimate Kylie, which was released on the 22nd of November 2004, and this also reached number 4 in the UK albums chart. Ultimate Kylie is a 2-disc compilation that covers all of Kylie's career from the beginning to date. So from the first album Kylie up until Body Language. It also contains 2 new singles, I Believe in You and Giving You Up. Now I've got a special place in my heart for Ultimate Kylie because that was actually the first Kylie album I ever had. I got it for Christmas 2004. Ultimate Kylie actually played a big part in me getting into Kylie properly as well, because I was listening to songs that I wouldn't have otherwise probably come across, especially the earlier stuff from before I was born. And Ultimate Kylie is a really perfect compilation, really, you know. If anybody's like, why do you like Kylie so much? Just give them Ultimate Kylie and be like, see for yourself. I also just have to say, I Believe in You is one of Kylie's finest songs ever. I absolutely adore I Believe in You. It is so, so stunning. The ballad version as well, so, so, so dreamy. I love that it's become a huge Kylie staple in her tours. It's a classic. If a man is ever lucky enough to meet me and put a ring on this finger, then I Believe in You will definitely be involved in the wedding somehow. Either walking down the aisle or first dance, I'm not really sure yet, but the ballad version as well, might I add. It would be very, very lovely, and there would not be a dry eye in the house. We also have Giving You Up, which was the second single from the album, and that was done with Xenomania, the hit makers behind some of the best British pop of the 2000s. They did a lot of songs for Girls Aloud, Sugar Babes, and Giving You Up is right at home in their best of, I think. It's quite an underrated track actually. It doesn't really get done live very often. It was done live on the Showgirl tour, and I can kind of see why it actually does get left off a bit, because it doesn't quite translate as well to a live setting, but I still really like Giving You Up. Ultimate Kylie as well also contains 2 B-sides, which is the first of these greatest hits compilations to do so. We have BPM, which was a B-side to I Believe in You, which is an absolute bop and a half, real feel good, I absolutely love it. And then we also have Made of Glass, which was a B-side to Giving You Up, which was also another Xenomania production, and Made of Glass is just really, really beautiful and dreamy. And actually, if it were up to me, I think maybe Made of Glass would have replaced Giving You Up on the album, and they would have been swapped around, but it wasn't up to me, so, and it doesn't really matter. It was how many years ago? And on the official Greatest Hits compilations, we had a bit of a quiet period, and then in 2012, we were granted with the Best Of, which was released on the 4th of June 2012, and it reached number 11 in the albums chart. Now, I have to say, calling it the best of, I think, is a bit of a sort of fast and loose term, if I'm honest. Not to be horrible. Not that the songs on here aren't really good. The track listing here is really good, you know. I mean, you can't go wrong with the Kylie Greatest Hits compilation, can you, really? It's just that I don't really think it flows particularly very well. It's a little bit haphazardly put together, and there's actually no new material on it either. It was basically put together to commemorate Kylie's 25th anniversary in the music business, as part of the K25 celebrations that went all throughout 2012. And like Best of Kylie Minogue, like, yeah, it's nice to have these songs on one disc, but I think really I don't know. Not really much to say about it. There was a new song called Time Bomb, which was released it was released a week before the Best Of, and yet it wasn't included on the Best Of. And I think, like, why didn't Time Bomb just get included on Best Of when, like, do you know what I mean? Because it would have at least given some incentive to buy the Best Of, you know. But thankfully in 2012, we had a better compilation to commemorate Kylie's 25th anniversary in the form of the Abbey Road Sessions. Now this is a bit of a different kind of greatest hits. Abbey Road Sessions was released on the 29th of October 2012, and it reached number 2 on the UK albums chart. It also spawned the one single, Flower. Abbey Road Sessions isn't your conventional greatest hits album. It contains her biggest hit singles, redone with an orchestra, and it sounds really lovely. So these are orchestral reworkings of some of her biggest hits. Again, like Ultimate Kylie, this spans her whole career. So you've got a real mixture of songs in the track listing. Pretty much almost every album is represented at the time. And I have to say, the orchestral reworkings is a really hard word to say, isn't it? Reworkings of her earliest material from the 80s and early 90s sounds really good. Like, some highlights on this compilation, the versions of I Should Be So Lucky and Never Too Late and Better the Devil You Know, they really bring out the sadness in those lyrics, which is sort of easy to miss on the original versions because they are so sort of perky poppy. And of course we have the sole new single, which is Flower. Flower was originally for X in 2007, but it was not included on the track listing. It was still on the X tour, but it otherwise was left off and remained unreleased until 2012. Flower is really lovely. It's very touching, it's very soft. She sings about her desire to have a child, and it's very moving, I think, you know. I definitely was a little bit teary when I first heard Flower as well. I remember actually, I've got the physical CD version of Flower, the single, and it has the instrumental of it, and I remember hearing the instrumental and just being a bit like, oh god, a bit wobbly with it. Abbey Road is definitely a compilation worth looking into. I wouldn't say the reworkings of the songs are better than the originals, but it is just a sort of lovely alternative way to look at Kylie's music. And lastly, with our greatest hits compilations, we have Step Back in Time. Now, I have multiple editions of this. So this is the 3 CD version. I've got the deluxe booklet version. I had it on cassette as well. Lovely little pink cassettes there. And of course, we have it on vinyl as well, because why wouldn't we? Step Back in Time was released on the 28th of June 2019, and it went straight to number 1 of the UK albums chart, giving Kylie her 7th? Was it 7th? Hang on. Straight, wait. How do you enjoy yourself? Here it says. Fever. Aphrodite. Golden. So, yeah. It gave Kylie her 7th number 1 album in the UK chart as well, and 3rd in that decade after both Aphrodite and Golden. Now, Step Back in Time is a all-inclusive compilation including every part of her career from the very beginning right up until at the time, present day, which was only last year. Now, Step Back in Time doesn't really offer anything new, other than New York City, which was a song for Golden originally that was cut off but then done on tour, became something of a infamous fan favourite, I guess, and it was redone for this album, released as the album's sole single. New York City is a fun little track, you know. It's fairly inconsequential, I'd say, but it's enjoyable and, you know, it was good on tour as well. Other than that, though, Step Back in Time doesn't actually offer anything new, per se. But, I mean, it's an album that includes all of her singles, pretty much. There's a few omissions, but then even then, this 3 CD version includes some of those previous omissions as well. And I think it is great to have a Kylie compilation album, to just have, you know, 32 years at this point, 32 years of fantastic singles in one compilation, and it flows really well. You've got the classic stuff on one disc and you've got the more modern stuff on the other disc, so it's divided up quite nicely. And as a pop compilation goes, it's pretty flawless. I mean, it says here, don't know if you can read that, it says pop precision since 1987, and that was the tagline for this album, and it definitely is that. And of course, Step Back in Time was released to coincide with her Glastonbury performance, which was the most viewed Glastonbury performance of all time. And that Glastonbury performance was such a huge moment as well. It was so wonderful. And like the goodwill from the general public towards Kylie during that time was just so wonderful to see as well. I'm just like, I was watching her and I bit when she got a bit emotional, because obviously she was meant to do it in 2005 and then she couldn't. Watching her sort of get emotional on stage, I was like, do you know? And Step Back in Time was a good way to sort of capitalise on that resurgence and that goodwill towards Kylie. Greatest hits albums in this day and age are somewhat obsolete, given that you can easily make a playlist. I mean, I remember when Step Back in Time was announced, with New York City being released like straight away, and somebody made a playlist already on Spotify, and the album still wasn't out for another month. But I think in the case of artists like Kylie, who maybe appeal to both the record buying demographic, such as myself, I do love to collect records, and the slightly more older fans, because obviously she appeals, you know, her career's been going for 30 years, so a lot of people who have been fans since the beginning will be a bit older, who still like physical records. As well as the fact that I think, you know, a greatest hits album for somebody like Kylie is great to have in supermarkets. You know, you're doing your weekly food shop and you just happen to see Kylie's greatest hits and you're like, oh, pop that in, you know, pop that in with my groceries, why not? Treat myself, you know. And so, you know, Step Back in Time was a triumph, and it gave her another #1 album, so, you know, I'm not mad at it. And when you've got a discography as wonderful as Kylie Minogue's, you've got to celebrate her, haven't you, with a greatest hits, or 2, or 3, or 13. I look forward to 2022's Confide in Me, the very best of pop precision since 1987 of Kylie Minogue, and it just being the same songs again. I look forward to that very much. And so, that wraps up Kylie Retrospectives. Full stop. We are finished until the next album, of course. I would like to say a big thank you to everybody who has watched my videos. I'd like to say a thank you to Kylie herself for providing me with some content to give you over the last few months. I hope you stay tuned and look out for more videos that I do. I have some ideas up my sleeve. So, that was awful. I have some ideas up my sleeve, so watch this space. And until next time, take care of yourself. I've been ElliXia Q Valentine. Thank you very much for tuning in. And don't forget, please book me. Mwah.